recently a deal on redistricting the Executive Council, and as you might expect, this is something that doesn't make everybody happy that serves on the council. The thing about redistricting is, one thing you can be sure about it is you're going to upset somebody, no matter what you end up doing when you move districts around. And the final product makes quite a bit of movement, but it does produce districts that look a whole lot less than many of other plans looked, in terms of different snakes and districts just moving around in various parts. But one thing is certain, no Democrats are going to support this Executive Council redistricting plan, because it does, in fact, end up with one very Democratic district, one that's represented right now by Dan St. Hilaire, the Republican from Concord, and one or two districts in which Democrats in the future, and perhaps now, conceivably could win, but not necessarily likely to win, and the other two extremely Republican districts. Let's go down the list. Ray Burton's district. Ray Burton was the big winner in this redistricting fight. He was the one who screamed the loudest. He wanted the most to change from either what the House had done or what the Senate had done, and he succeeded. He ended up with a district very much like his own, except it moved further south and picks up even more territory. So that's all good for Ray Burton. For the long term, I might point out, Ray Burton's district has become more Democratic. And by that I mean, once Ray Burton moves on, that district is one in which a Democrat could replace him. It's not a given, but it's a competitive district, as it's now conceived. Let's go to Dan St. Hilaire's district, because that's the one that's been changed the most, and certainly that's the one that is the most at risk for Dan St. Hilaire. He has not even confirmed at this point whether he would definitely run for re-election. There's a lot of speculation he may not file. Colin Van Oostern, the Concord Democratic activist, former campaign manager for Annie Custer when she ran for Congress in 2010. He's up and running and raising a lot of money, and he's got a very Democratic district now in which to run it. The district now includes many Democratic towns and some cities at both ends of the state, both in the seacoast and also over in Keene and a number of the communities nearby. Could Dan St. Hilaire conceivably win re-election? Absolutely, he could. But he's the underdog, I would argue, now. I mean, he could win that seat simply because the presidential race is going to dominate this election cycle, as we're going to talk about for the next several months. And as an executive council race, it's going to be difficult to get attention. But, as I pointed out before, if you've got a whole different district with a lot more Democratic voters, if they vote their party, and President Obama runs strong in New Hampshire, even if he doesn't necessarily win New Hampshire outright, that should help Democrats further down the ballot and certainly help Colin Van Oostern. So that's where that stands. The other swing district, certainly the one where a Democrat could win because you've got a very good candidate, is where Ray Wazorek now resides, the Manchester Republican who's not running for re-election after 10 years retiring from politics. Chris Pappas, Democratic restaurant owner, former state representative, is the standard bearer on the Democratic side. Tom DeBlois is the state senator from Manchester, not running for his re-election. He's running for that seat. He probably figures to be the leading candidate at this point. Filing period has started now. There are at least two other people who've talked about running and probably will file. We really won't know until the end of the filing period what that race is going to look like, and whether DeBlois either is going to have difficulty winning a nomination or conceivably is no longer going to be the leading candidate. But Pappas is a strong candidate on the Democratic side, one of the stronger challengers for an executive council seat that the Democrats have had for a couple of elections. So he's got a very good chance. But he's running in a very Republican district. This has been changed, and it's been changed to the good for Republicans. The district that really used to be Greater Manchester now has gone all the way up to Loudoun, and some into Belknap County as well, and big Republican territory. If they vote party, if they vote consistently, as many do in a presidential election, that should really help the Republican candidate, whoever that nominee is. So, but the two seats that have become certainly more Republican would be Chris Sununu's on the Seacoast, the Newfields Republican. Thought he was going to get rid of Portsmouth, which would have been a big plus for him. He did not, ultimately, at the end, with this plan. But he does pick up Derry, which is a very Republican town, and a lot of the movement into other communities shades Republican. It's become a more Republican district, and he really looks like a safe incumbent for re-election, depending on who runs against him. And at this point, nobody has announced that they will. In District 5, the fifth and last district, Dave Wheeler, the Milford Republican, is running for re-election. He's opposed by former councilor Deb Pignatelli, who Wheeler beat 2 years ago. And in a previous life in elections, Deb Pignatelli beat Wheeler to first win that council seat. So this is a rematch, and Dave Wheeler's got some help with this map if it gets adopted. He picks up Goffstown, Antrim, Deering, where a lot of very rock-rib Republican communities up in Hillsborough County. He loses Keene, and that's the biggest change. A very Democratic city, a city where former Senator Pignatelli and Councilor Pignatelli was very popular and does very well in. So, so going forward, that's certainly a more Republican district. This is all why, by the way, John Lynch, in all likelihood, will veto the Executive Council redistricting plan if it gets through the House and the Senate in an up or down vote this week. But as we saw in the House redistricting plans, I wouldn't assume a veto by the governor on council redistricting is going to be sustained. I'd say the odds are good that that veto would be overridden. One of the reasons why is simply how late in the game we are and how moot this is. I mean, because at the end of the day, this redistricting bill is not going to be brought to the governor for his consideration, at least until well into the filing period. So you've got this strange situation where a lot of candidates are going to file for a council district and without knowing exactly whether this new map is going to be theirs or not. And so is that good for the executive councils? You bet it is. I mean, this is the best thing that could have happened to the incumbent, simply because your opponent really can't prepare for for an election campaign against you if they don't know who they're running against or where they're running. So, so the inertia on the Republican legislative leadership side and the membership side simply is going to be, well, let's let this happen. You know, these the population districts are very small differences between them. It certainly would uphold a court challenge, it appears, at least on that score. So this is probably what we're going to end up with. And it's going to make for some interesting executive council races in a year when all elections